Hello, my name is Cactus Con Carne, and welcome to my kitchen. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Usually I do a Cactus Cooks the Internet right now, but I'm going to postpone that until the next video. What I really wanted to tackle is these are my top 10 items that I think you should have in a kitchen, or that I use all the time in my kitchen, and I would like to share this information with you. So number one, these are realistically in no particular order except the last one is the most important. So first thing we're going to talk about is a plastic cutting board. Now why plastic? Well, if you have wood, they're nice and heavy, and glass are, equally as good. But glass can break. You don't want glass in your food. Wood is porous and will actually hold all of the meat juice and smells and everything. So if you're going to use wood, only use it for baking or vegetable chopping. Those are the only two things you should ever use it for. Plastic is easy to clean, doesn't hold the smells, doesn't hold any of the bacteria on it, soap and water, everything else. I also recommend something non-stick like this. This is just I believe they were selling it as the interior for cabinets, so you can put your cups and everything on, but I've cut it just the nice size for my cutting board, so when I use it, I can push on it as much as I want, and my cutting board will not move. Now, second thing I recommend everybody has is a nice probe thermometer. These ones are really easy to find. Has a nice digital display. You can have it in Celsius or Fahrenheit, and nice sharp point that you can stick straight into your meat or whatever it potentially is to get a nice reading. I like these ones. There are other ones that have longer probes, and the longer probes, kind of save your hands if you're reaching into the oven rather than, the short little one. Third thing I recommend is kosher salt and pepper. Two spices you should always have on hand. Why? Because you could always season anything with just these two ingredients. Now, pepper, cracked black, so the full corn's in here, and it's just in a simple little grinder. Kosher salt. Now I recommend kosher salt because it's bigger pieces. They're nice and thick, big, so you're not stumbling around when you're trying to pinch it. It's a nice amount. You can always just have a nice pinch and throw it on your food. I also recommend a nice little neat bowl like this. This is actually 1 cup fully. So I filled it to a cup. If I ever need a cup of salt, I can just dump that whole thing in there. Now I also have my kosher salt in a grinder as well. In case anybody wants a little bit extra on top, you can just grind it on top. But my mother's terrible for putting salt on everything, so that's more for her. The next thing is a good knife set. Now what classifies as a good knife set? Well, that's up to you to decide. When I started, I had a plastic handled, chef knife. Wasn't anything special. It wasn't weighted correctly for my hand. Now, that's a smaller knife. This is the big old chef knife. It wasn't weighted correctly when I was chopping. And that's what you want. This one has a full tang, which is the tail that goes all the way through it. It's a full piece of metal. It's not broken here, and this isn't hollow. It goes all the way through. So when you have that, it should feel nice and weighty in your hand, and you should be comfortable using it when you go and chop. Now to go with your knives, I recommend a sharpener like this. This is actually from J.A. Henkel, which is the same as my knives. This is not a sponsored post. These are just the knives that I use all the time. They seem to be working for me. Whatever works for you may work for you. Now, it's one of the ones where you put your knife in and pull backwards to sharpen. Now that'll keep your knives sharp, but once you've sharpened them with this, you also need the honing edge. Now, a lot of people mistake this for a sharpener, but it is not. What it does is when you sharpen your blade, there's actually metal burrs on it when you sharpen it. And what this does is when you use it correctly, what you'd want to do is you want to start at the base of your knife and bring it all the way down to the tip of the honing edge and do the same thing. Now you want to get it at a decent angle as well. Some people do it like this, some people you see them do it in the air, doesn't matter. I find it easy to set it on the counter like this, and it slips like this. That's where this comes in as well. So straight down like this, and you want it maybe at about a 45 as you're doing it. You want it the same on both sides. So the honing edge will take those burrs that are on it and realign them. Now what that does is when the burrs aren't aligned, it'll just rip and tear something like a serrated blade. But when you align them, it'll be like gliding through butter. And that's what you want. You don't want ripping and tearing, because that's not, well, I'll say it's not good eats. A third thing to have with your blades is a decent pair of kitchen shears. Now these are again J.A. Henkel, and they are nice and heavy duty. They will go through bone, so you can cut into your chicken, do whatever. They also have this nice little cracker attachment on the back, in case you need to get through things like that. Mine unfortunately do not separate. That's the ideal, is when you're getting kitchen shears, to have them twist off and separate the two parts so you can clean in here. But these ones have served me well so far, but I plan on getting a new set in the future that separates. The next item that everybody should have is a food processor. Now why do I say this? Well, I used to go through and not use a food processor. I used to do everything by hand. Little story, one time I was making, it's called sex in a pan, and you had to take whipped cream and cream cheese and mix them together. I was trying to do that by hand, and it was nearly impossible. Until I remembered I had my food processor. So I took my food processor, whipped in the blade, and it was so much easier to get everything integrated like that. It took the time in half from what I was mixing. Now it can do magical things, like if you look at the last video, pumpkin bread, I used it just to mix and sift my flour together and my dry goods in here. Now it also comes with a shredding blade, which I used in the last video, to shred the pumpkin. That's another easy attachment that usually comes with it standard. And you can use them to, you know, get a whole bunch of cheese if you need some shredded cheese or what have you. The only thing I do not like about this one in particular is the setting where the feed tube is. Unfortunately, everything gets caught in between the lid and the feed tube, and I lose a lot of my product. Just right here. So if I were to suggest something, I would suggest the feed tube more in the middle of your processor. But this works just fine, and it's helped me out on numerous occasions. Another item I suggest is gloves. Now you can get these sterile latex gloves They are powder free. And they are surgical quality, but with no powder on them. So they are food safe. Now what you use this for is if you're handling raw meat, you don't want to have to, wash your hands every 5 seconds. You can just take the glove off, throw it away, put on a new glove. If you have to, stick your kid's soother in his mouth or what have you, if working mom, or if you gotta turn up the oven to a certain degree, you can just take the glove off, have a nice clean hand, put a new glove on, and keep working. The other things they're for is if you're handling like hot peppers, so you don't get the oil on your hands and burn them with the oil, or if you're doing breadings or things like that. So if you've got your flour, your eggs, you'll get club hand, and we'll talk more about that later. But essentially, it's when you're taking your dry into your wet and then going back into your dry, and all the stuff just sticks on your hands. It's terrible. So gloves are a decent thing. The second to last thing that I'm going to say is a scale. I think everybody should have a scale, especially for baking, because once you weigh your items, it changes your baking game. I used to bake without it, and my bakings were terrible. Never turned out until I started weighing my products. Now, you can get all the information online to how much a cup is by weight. A pint is a pound the world around is a nice saying, that the only thing I can remember. So, if you're looking to do a pint, it's a pound of whatever you're looking for. And, weigh everything. If it gives you a measurement in flour, weigh that out. Weigh the sugar, weigh your, you don't need to weigh your eggs, because, 3 eggs is 3 eggs no matter what. The runner-up for this list is actually a decent board scraper / bowl scraper. Now this is both. It's got the hard edge here that I can scrape my board with, but it's also got this nice silicone edge here that I can scrape out a bowl with to get all my goodness out of it. The last thing, and the number one thing I think everybody should have in their kitchen, is vinegar in a spray bottle. Well, why vinegar in a spray bottle, you ask? Vinegar, or acetic acid, disinfects, deodorizes, and cuts grease. Now, it can take on salmonella and E. coli, and it's 100% food safe. Lots of people use bleach. When you use bleach, you cut it 1:4 ratio. You should never go more than that, but you should only use bleach as a last resort. And I've seen people just pour straight bleach on their cutting board to clean it. That's not food safe. You can't do that. You can do this. You can take a straight into your mouth. This is just pure vinegar. That's all it is. If you want, you can cut it with a little bit of water. I do not recommend it because then it loses its disinfecting power. Vinegar. But it is 100% food safe rather than bleach. You can't do that with bleach. So that is my list. That is my list of 10 things and one runner-up you should have in your kitchen at all times. Thanks for watching.